want to tell you a couple of stories. You all know me, those of you who know me in this group know that I like to tell stories. And I often get really odd looks when I stand up and talk about diversity and inclusiveness with the last name like Fredrickson. A lot of you have heard me say that I'm Mexican. I'm Mexican and Norwegian, but I was raised by my Mexican mom, and so I was brought up culturally in a Mexican household. It's the culture that I identify. Interestingly, that didn't happen until I was in first grade. After my parents had divorced, my mom moved us to Fredrickson, and I promptly got my butt kicked in my new school. I came home and I was bloody and my clothes were torn. And my mom said to me, what happened? That's my mom calls me Mijito. She still is. I'm 50 years old. She still calls me Mijito, which is my little son in Spanish. I talked to her yesterday. She started the conversation with Mijito, what happened to you? I said, I got into a fight. She said, well, I can see that. She said, why'd you get into a fight? I said, well, these three kids called me Mexican. And she said, the way she tells the story, she said, I didn't quite know what to tell you. What I said to you was, well, you are. And I said, what does it mean? And she said, well, it means that you are part of a family that came here from Mexico. Your grandparents immigrated, your grandfather from Hermosillo in Mexico, and your grandmother from Nogales, and they got married at a very young age. And became after they were married, they had kids. My grandfather worked in the copper mines in Tucson, Arizona. Diversity and inclusiveness on a fall day in first grade. Fast forward to being 27 years old and a brand new attorney in a law firm, a Denver-based law firm that had offices here in Denver and in Lincoln, Nebraska. And the one thing that I realized is that there weren't a lot of people like me in that law firm. In other words, our firm was very white and very male. Not a lot of women in our firm, and I think after I was hired, one Latino attorney, that was me. And in some people's eyes, you don't get 5 credit since I have the Norwegian side of my family. And so that hit me like a ton of bricks, because I realized that not only was my own law firm not very diverse or inclusive, but law firms in general tend to be very non-diverse animals. They're institutions that have been around for a long time. They tend to be dominated by, generally speaking, white men. And so part of the process is getting comfortable with each other, talking about these issues, being able to describe each other without worrying what we say. I'll give you a great example of that. I remember when I opened the Fisher Phillips office, I was meeting with one of my partners, and I used the phrase attorneys of color, and he got beet red. Now, Ed is in our Atlanta office, grew up in law firms in the South, and thought that there was something wrong with using that phrase. And I explained to him that that's sort of the language that we use today when we're talking about a particular group of diverse attorneys. Typically, when you're talking about ethnic minority attorneys, trying to recruit them, trying to retain them, we refer to them as attorneys of color. I said, but don't get so hung up on labels. Use me as an example. A lot of people refer to me as Hispanic. A lot of people refer to me as Latino. A lot of people refer to me as Mexican. Some people do call me Mexican, especially in my office. I've been called Cuban, Puerto Rican. I don't know much about Cuban culture. I do know that I love ropa vieja, which is one of the best food groups on the planet. It's shredded beef with a bunch of vegetables in it. It's awesome. Try it if you ever go to a Cuban restaurant. Cuba has really good ropa vieja. But what I said to him is, I will generally answer to all of those. And I am Hispanic, and I am Latino, and I am Mexican. And don't get so worried about how you refer to me. Let's be able to talk about these issues comfortably. So that when I say in my firm, I get up in my firm and I present to